All right, so today I figured we could take a look at my rack. It's been something that I switched out a couple of months ago and never really made a dedicated video on. I've done a couple of gym tours in the past, not one that I think includes this. I'm due for another gym tour soon. I'm actually waiting on a couple more pieces to come in to complement this rack and kind of finish the space in a sense, or at least until the next gym tour video. And I figured coming on today to kind of talk about the rack in general, about why I switched from Rogue to Irwin Fitness, as well as talk about what lives and breathes on this rack, would give me a little bit of a buffer because you could really spend a lot of time in my rack or on my rack if that suits your needs better. So figured I'd go ahead and just do that. I'll try to put timestamps on stuff as I talk about this in case you want to jump around, because I have a feeling it's going to be a somewhat of a longer form video. So first things first, why did I switch? You guys might recall I had a Rogue 6-post rack before. It started initially as a 4-post rack. It was the RM3. I used that in a garage setting while we built this house. I moved in here and I had that for a while before I decided to fully expand to a 6-post rack, which we would call like an RM5 because it had a 30-inch depth in the front, 24-inch depth in the rear. And that worked well for quite a while. But one of the things that I've noted over the past year or two is as I get more and more into powerlifting specificity, I couldn't really use a lot of my competition style bars in this rack without issue. And that's because the Rogue rack was a little bit wider at 49 inches wide. The collars on those competition bars are pretty thin, so the plates are really close to the uprights. And even with a really clean squat, most people step back and out. You get a little bit of side momentum and there's really not a lot of room to play with. There's a high chance you're going to hit the uprights with the plates, which became annoying. So I would either use bars with thicker collars, which weren't the same kind of bars I would use in competition, which is annoying because a lot of the power bars I have those thin competition style collars on it. Or I could use kind of what the bumper trick is you put like plates on the inside or collars on the inside to kind of push the weights out further, which also was just not ideal. So one of the reasons I wanted to look at new racks was to get something a little bit less wide, preferably in a 47-inch style. The other thing is when I first got that Rogue rack, I had to get 90 inches because of the space in the garage it was going in. I had limited overhead clearance, so I needed to make sure that it would fit under certain aspects of that very small garage that I was in and be a very small footprint overall. And my intentions weren't to keep that rack past that initial garage. When I came back down to the real basement as we built it, we put in higher ceilings. So my thought was I would get something like a Sorinex Apex style rack, which at the time was one of the few racks that had like integrated cabling systems within it. But I just really liked that Rogue rack and found that expanding upon it to a 6-post rack really fit a lot of my needs for the most part. But ideally, if I could have gone higher, I would have. And I actually considered getting 100-inch uprights from Rogue, but the thought of just switching all of those out at 6 posts at the time, as well as still having the issue with the width, wasn't that appealing to me. So interestingly enough, I worked with Irwin Fitness to develop some A-horns, which are those angled cross members I had on my Rogue rack, which elevated the pull-up bar about 6 inches or so and put it in a better space. Being a little bit of a taller person, 90 inches for pull-ups could still be a little bit difficult. So I wanted to go higher, I wanted to go narrower, and I also wanted that customization that I like to get. I like to brand stuff. If I'm going to spend a lot of money on stuff, like I spend a lot of time in this basement, and you guys are probably well aware, I want things to be kind of what I expect. So I could have gone with the Rep route because Rep offers thinner racks at 47 inches, but I might have trouble going to the height I wanted to go to, and I would probably have to go outside sources to get more customization stuff done, which is okay. But working with Irwin on this particular rack gave me some opportunities to be a little bit unique, test out some stuff that Garth wanted to do and that I wanted on my rack, give me some of the customizations that I wanted, give me the narrower width that I was desiring, and he also has 96 inches as a standard offering through his company, so I wouldn't have to get 100-inch uprights and cut them or anything like that, which I might have to do through Rogue. Now, truth be told, I could probably fit 100-inch uprights in here, but 96 is kind of perfect for me given my height, because if you can see the handles right here, put my arm up, I'm just out of clearance there. So this is like a perfect height for me because I could just do a little bit of a hop, grab the handles, have no issues. Or if I really needed to get up there, I could just use a small step on the side of this cross member, in order to get up there and start adjusting stuff. 100 would put me pretty close to the ceiling, and on pull-ups, my head would be in the rafters. Not ideal necessarily. So 96 was a sweet spot, and everything kind of fell in line in that regard. And that's one of the reasons I decided to switch. Now, luckily for me, I do make money off of some of these videos through views or affiliates or codes that you guys use to support me. I'm very thankful for that. And I have a nice system set up here where pretty much anything I make off of this YouTube channel and my affiliates, I put back in to my own gym, and that's how I've been able to upgrade stuff over the time and not make a significant dent on my own wallet. But that being said, the Rogue rack, instead of selling it, I actually ended up giving it away. And I gave it away to one of my friends from growing up in Virginia, who just so happens to live up in Massachusetts now, and he was in the market for a new rack. He has a young family like myself, and it just aligned perfectly where I said, hey, I got you, let me give you this rack. And everything's worked out great. And he sent me pictures of him and his kids using it, so that's really cool to see. And I'm glad it could go to a very good home. And I got a rack, which I think is pretty nice if I don't say so myself. So in this video, what I want to do is just go through what's on here, why it's on here, maybe just give you some quick feedback on some of the equipment and manufacturers. It is not all Irwin Fitness on here, as I'm sure you can tell. So let's go ahead and start right on the front. So first things first, let's talk about the handles up top. I will say, and I've said this in other videos, I prefer when building out a rack to have cross members everywhere. Oftentimes standard, what you'll find is a pull-up bar up top, which is fine for some people because it lets you have a pull-up bar. It's a cheaper option and it still stabilizes the rack nice and firm. For me though, I would rather have the versatility and options to be able to mount stuff there. And in this case, I've chosen to mount handles that act as a pull-up bar. So if I want to remove those and put something else, I can very well do that. For instance, the Voltras, which I'll talk about in just a second, I could mount in the center here and act as a lat pull down. So I have some more versatility in that sense. As far as the handles go on here, I have two sets of handles. One, the angled ones, are the actual Campbell handles that I made in collaboration with Oak Club. I made those as a versatile way to do things like Hatfield squats to give you two different hands positions, as well as pull-ups, because the standard handles that I had from Rogue, which are just their monster squat handles, only offer one hand position. I saw some stuff from Sornex, but nothing really fit my needs, so I brought this idea to Oak Club, and they've since kind of blown it out of the water because I've seen a ton of people actually pick these up, and the feedback on them has been really good. And then, again, I have my Rogue ones here, just because I already had them, and I think it looks pretty nice up there having those options out there. It almost looks like some of those crown pull-up bar attachments that you might see, but these are completely removable, adjustable for width and everything like that. And again, can double for movements when you're doing squatting things where you need to have some sort of hand grip on there. Next, we'll come down here to the Voltras. I mentioned this before. I have two, and I've had these for over a year, and they've really picked up steam recently. When these first released, and even to this day, most people say those are way too expensive. I will say these things are awesome. They're phenomenal. I use them all the time, as does my wife, and if you really use them to their full potential, they can be very well worth it, but they are not cheap, and I do worry about long-term usability and obsolescence, just like I would with any sort of electronics. A single unit's gonna cost you about $2,000. Add in the actual mount that I have on here, which is another couple $100, and then double that because I have two units, it ends up being very expensive. But these things are great not only as like a single column type work, but also as like a functional trainer. Now, the downside is here being in a 47-inch rack, sometimes some of the width things could potentially come into play, but I have a lot of different mounts for these where I could put them on some of the support beams down here if I wanted to, hook them up to pull-up bars if I wanted to. So they are very versatile and I love them a lot, and it's great to see a lot of people also use them. Now, again, the nice thing with these here is on these adjustments that they're on, which is I believe the sliding rack mount, you simply just loosen this a little bit. There's a little pop pin, and these things just move up and down really easily. Put it where you want it and tighten it, and it's good to go. If it's something where they're completely in the way, you want to get them off the rack, or maybe you just want to put them somewhere else, again, very simple. You just loosen it, and there's two little things you grab, and it's off the rack completely. So I love these things. I can't say that enough, but again, giving the price point and my own concerns about longevity and obsolescence, they're still hard to recommend. At some point, I will do a video review on them. Part of the issue is they keep coming out with updates to them, which is great to see. So it's really well supported, but there's just so much potential content. And also, a lot of stuff that I haven't even like used them for yet, which I could definitely see them being used for. So they're cool, they're great, they're expensive. Make up your own mind, if you will. Coming down here, I'll talk about the J-cups when I get to the side of these racks. The only thing other in front is I have some just standard J-cups, standard in a sense that they're pretty bougie if they have my logo inside them from Bridgebuilt. They're what they are. They've held up pretty well. I don't want to get too into it due to some issues with Bridgebuilt recently with the community. But I like to have these on here if I'm doing stuff outside of the rack, which I don't do a ton of stuff on, but I'm doing like a rowing movement with a barbell or overhead pressing movement with a barbell. I'll usually set the J-cups up facing out, and that way I can do my work outside of the rack. So that is the front. Let's go ahead and maybe change the camera angle just a second so I can talk about some of the stuff that's on the side. All right, I'm gonna have to show you some B-roll of stuff just because I know we're kind of far away, but I also want you to see the complete side of the rack. So let's start towards the top. The first thing that we'll note is I still have my Darko lifting anchors on here. These things are great for barbell storage in general. So the general purpose or thought behind these is these get your barbells up and out of the way, but don't really take up any more space than your rack normally would. Now this is a dual hanger, so you could fit 2 bars in here, and again, it's just on by a single bolt, so you could move this anywhere that you see fit. So obviously it's gonna help if you have a little bit of a taller rack, depending on your height, to get it completely out of the way. So I actually love this for safety squat bar storage. As you can see above, I have the Rep safety squat bar up there, just because even though I have other barbell storage throughout my gym, that bar is a little bit more annoying as it requires more space. And to be honest, I'm not gonna use that bar anywhere outside of the squat rack. So to have it up there, just being able to flip it down, take it out, and put it right on the hooks as is super convenient for me. And I love the actual barbell anchor from Darko just because you can customize it with pretty much any color you want. So it blends in really, really well. Coming down here on this side first, we have the Irwin Fitness Roller J-Cup. So this is the first piece of equipment I bought from Irwin. And buying these and seeing how beefy and how quality they were, coming from a ton of other roller J-Cups, really kind of put me in the right direction when I wanted to buy a rack. So that's why I looked at their racks initially, because I knew what kind of quality I could expect from them. These things have lasted really well. They've seen a lot of wear, obviously, because anytime I squat, I'm using these, and I've had these for well over a year as well. But still roll really, really well, and I like the beefiness of them. Now, you don't have to secure these down, but I have. So I have some of these speed pins from Surplus Strength, and I actually have some custom end caps on here as well to really kind of help complement things overall. And I like these things a lot. Big, beefy cups. What else could you want? How about more big, beefy cups? So again, this is from Bridgebuilt. I recently did a video on these. These are kind of their hybrid cups. It's a mix between a sandwich and a roller J cup. I like them for the most part. They're extremely expensive. And again, given Bridgebuilt's recent issues, I don't want to say too much about them until things settle down just a little bit. But check my review on either of these if you want to see them. Coming down here next, we have safety straps. So I actually have the flip down safeties as well that goes with this. To be honest, I'm a strap-on kind of guy. As terrible as that sounds, I like straps because to me, they're pretty easily adjusted because I use just some quick adjustment pins on here. In this case, these ones are actually from Rep that I got from their adjustable seat, but these are 5/8 inch pins. I've done videos on switching these out otherwise because most safety straps are actually bolted on. These ones just use detent pins to get in and out, so very easy to put in and out. I like safety straps because they're not as jarring when you hit them. So if you're coming down and accidentally hitting a safety, if they're set at the right position, there's a little bit of slack in here where it's not going to be so off-putting when you're doing your lift. It's also going to protect your bar a little bit better because it's not hard metal or plastic. And you can also get some good adjustability because you can offset the heights of these things to make the bar fail either away from you, towards you, whatever the case that you'd want to do. So I like the fact that it's a little bit different. And again, these have held up really, really well overall. And these ones that I got from Irwin Fitness, it's probably hard to see here, but they're actually made by Spud Inc., which you guys are probably well familiar with. They make a lot of great stuff when it comes to straps and bands and all that other stuff. Coming down further, we have the Stray Dog roller. I've done a video on this as well. This is like an injection molded plastic on here. So unlike the Rogue version, which is like kind of like a softer material, this one's really hard, really firm, longer, girthier, beefier, all that good stuff, but it still uses the single post connection, which you can tighten down, which I like because a lot of other rollers like this act like a J cup where there's some looseness to them. In this case, you can tighten it down so it's nice and firm. This thing spins really well, which depending on what movement you're doing can either be great or it can be a little bit scary at times. But I like this a lot as well because you can actually customize the color of this if you don't want just a normal black color. He sells different covers that you can get here, and I have a whitish version on here. A little bit further down, you can see hopefully the Clever built Adroit landmine. I don't use the landmine a lot because I've fully built out this gym where I have a lot of other options. When I was in the garage and kind of limited on space and machines, the landmine came in handy, and I still do use this weekly, just not as much. I like this, I've done a video on it. It's similar in movement to the Rogue Monster version, which is really good. However, its footprint is a lot less, and I like the fact that it can just kind of magnetize and be right away. It has, a polycarbonate sleeve on the inside for barbell protection. It has a little pillow in there as well for your barbell. So really keeps things safe and looking good in the long term. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and flip this around the other side, and I'll talk a little bit about what's in this back kitty corner as well. All right, coming to this back side of the rack, normally for this setup through Irwin, this would actually be 18 inches of depth. So the 690 Slim, if you will, would be a 30-inch inside depth, which I have, and then an 18-inch depth in the back section. So overall, the footprint is relatively small or slim, if you will. In my case, I actually went with a 24-inch depth on the inside, and that's mainly because we were adding in some shelves, which were the first time going around, and I wanted a little bit extra clearance between the uprights and whatnot, so I decided to extend this just a little bit. But again, the footprint for me is ideal. I think 30 inches on the inside for the main working section is the sweet spot, if you will. Now, a couple of cool, unique things, and we'll start towards the top. One of the first things we tried with Irwin are these new adapters, which kind of play into the arches up here on the side. So this piece here, as you can kind of see on the B-roll, it's cut out and bolts in. And what this does is a couple things. Number one, it gives you a spot to hang your chains, which is great. Previously, I was using a Rogue version, but this is integrated nicely into it. It has UHMW plastic all around it to kind of protect it some. And then I also have basically like a half anchor here or another place for barbell storage. So if I wanted to throw another bar up there, I could. Again, it's built in, nice, tucked out of the way, and everything looks really streamlined. Kind of hard to see here, but on the inside, I do have these little utility hooks from Stray Dog also, where I have a lot of my other chain connecting options from Spud Inc., some leader chains, as well as ones from Elite FTS as well. So just ways to hang chains. And again, I think it looks pretty badass. The only real thing I would say about this that's a little bit of a negative is this first slot for chains is too close in my opinion, because if you're using bigger chains like I am here, there's not really a lot of room on it. So I have just 3 pairs per side, but that's probably as much as I'd use on one side of a bar anyways. Over here, you also have more docking systems. So this is a 2-bar holder. Again, that's integrated into the uprights and the arches here. So really nice to see. I'll show you some B-roll of it. Now, I do not have bars there or here just because it's gonna block the logo arch on the main part of the frame, which we'll talk about towards the end of this video. But again, I like having options. I also have a lot of other storage options here for my other sets of cups and hooks. So I have another set of Irwins back here, but in this case, they have like a Duffalo bar block. This one's actually for the Rogue CB4, so it's thicker, it can accommodate that. But if you have like a bow bar, I like to use these so that that bow does not slide off the rollers, because that could definitely be a real world problem. Down here, I also have some Oak Club. These are the James Hook 2. I really like the profile of these. I just don't tend to find that I use a lot of sandwich style cups anymore because I predominantly use rollers when I do most things. Down here, we have their spotter arms. I mentioned already, I don't do a lot of lifting outside of the rack, but have a pair of these anyways, mostly because of how cool they are with the customization. And you'll see this logo here in the honeycomb pattern, how it actually ties into the rack overall. These are big, these are beefy, they are heavy, really nice. I just don't find that I use them tremendously much. These are also secured by some of those speed pins from Surplus Strength with that customized logo as well. The other things I have on here, which you can't see, they're a little out of sight behind these 45s. I have band pegs as well. Don't do a lot of band work on this rack, but they're there for when I need them. Coming to the end side of this, I have plate storage. So I have Strength Co plates. I have 45s. There are 8 pairs of 45s, 3 pairs of 35s, 3 pairs of 25s, 4 pairs of 10s, 4 pairs of 5s, 4 pairs of 2.5s, and 4 pairs of 1.25 pound plates. So all the plates that you could potentially need, unless you're me, and then you have lots of other plates in your gym as well. Now, when you get the Irwin system, there is plate storage options. There's pins. You can actually upgrade to stainless pins as well. I actually told Garth that I was going to keep my Rogue utility pins here because I really like the fact that they're like this plasticky type material, and they're also single post. So each one of these just requires 1 bolt. And when you have a bunch of other stuff or are planning on having a bunch of stuff on here, the traditional 2-bolt system per pin can really add up and take up a lot of space. So I decided to keep my existing ones from my old Rogue rack, with the exception of up here, something I also had in my Rogue rack, but this is from Sorinex. This is their dual plate holder. Stray Dog makes ones that is a 3-plate holder, and I think some other companies do now as well. However, those are powder coated. These ones are actually the same material as this. So really like how this works out overall. And again, because of the height and my height, I can reach all the plates and have access to all of these things quite nicely. So that is the side of the rack. Let's take you to the back, the big bang. Whoops. All right, so there's no real good angle to show you this just because of the slimness of the rack, the massiveness of myself, and the fact I want to talk about stuff that's behind me. So let's just kind of break it down. Again, we'll start at the top. We'll work our way down. Again, I mentioned one of the reasons I went with Irwin was because of the customization options. This logo archway is awesome. This thing is heavy duty, laser cut steel, multiple layered logo here. Really, really nice. Now, I did like my Rogue one before, the Bar Don't Lie version with the cutout and my logo. I've done a video on that a couple of years ago. If you recall though, that logo in the cutout center was just a vinyl sticker because it was too complicated at the time for Rogue to do. And overall, it was a pretty basic setup. It also kind of always bothered me that it was a little bit off-centered just based off of how the logo was and where the wording was. Just things didn't line up perfectly, which is a small complaint, but I really like how this one turned out. And again, the honeycomb pattern that ties into the spotter arms as well, I think really makes for a complete look on there. Coming down here, shelving. So at the time, when I first was looking into this from Irwin, they did not have a lot of shelving options available. However, I really liked the shelving setup I had with my Rogue system. And that's one of the reasons I never got a drop-in Rhino. Just found that the application of shelving back here really made the rack, in my opinion, look better, helped a lot with storing stuff, and the fact that it doesn't elongate the rack even more. Again, I was trying to kind of make this as compact and functional as possible, and adding something in like a drop-in Rhino, which you have to have a pretty decent sized rear portion for, as well as account for weight sticking out the back. But we can talk about that more in the Rhino video. The shelving on here, fantastic and fantastically heavy. I assembled this complete rack by myself without any help. I do not recommend you do that. That is not a badge of honor. It's basically saying I survived, because these pieces and this rack in general is super, super heavy. These shelving units are thick steel. Things are bolted in here like the actual protection on top. This thing is no joke, and there were several times where I questioned if I was going to live or not. But we have 2 flat shelves for storage and a bottom shelf for bumper plates, as you can see. I'll talk about that in a second. On here is an ever rotating array of things. So just really quick, I have like the Beyond Power strap mount hookup. I have a barbell bomb, which in the past I'd actually used on the bottom of my log from Mike Bartos. That way I could kind of keep it upright and protect it from the floor. I have some cool things on here, like a Clever built loading pin and a ball grip if I want to test my grips on holding those balls, some Pro Lock collars, a knockoff bench block, some foot wedges as well. And something really cool I still haven't done a video on are these Pepin, or this Pepin kettlebell. So you have probably seen the Repins now. Can't even just say the Pepin adjustable dumbbells, because most people have moved on to the Repins as the standard. but this is a kettlebell version of it. Pretty slick, pretty cool. I like this a lot. Have not done a dedicated video on it. Beneath that, we have another row of shelving. These are the AbMat slam balls, medicine balls. These are really nice. They only offer 3 sizes. If they offered more, I'd probably buy heavier, but it goes from 10 to 14 to 20 pounds. These things are really nice because they hold up really well. I've busted a couple of medicine balls in the past, but these hold up well and they look really nice. Beneath that, we have bumper plate storage. So I have, I think, 2 complete sets of Gymway USA Elite Black bumper plates. Things are really nice, have some nice metal hubs in them. I don't use them a ton necessarily. My wife actually uses them a lot. She uses them more than I do. But I was just thinking, like, as I'm building out this gym for me and for my family in the future, if my boys who are growing up who are very into sports want to get into stuff like Olympic lifting or power cleans for whatever sports they choose to do, just having the option is nice. I got 1 set free from Gymway for review purposes, and I liked them so much, I bought a 2nd set and some additional 25 kilos. But really nice, and I think it integrates really well. And obviously it kind of speaks to this rack's robustness because it has like 1,500, almost 2,000 pounds probably of weights on this rack currently. Now, one of the downsides of being a guinea pig or the first time something happens is with this shelving, what we found is the shelves couldn't sit as low as we wanted to on the bottom. So in my past life with the Rogue rack, this shelving here was more in line with the bottom uprights, which was a little bit easier of getting weights in and out. And it also kind of cleaned up this gap on the bottom. But it's kind of a blessing in disguise because this shelf is a little bit higher, I can now shove more crap under here. And in this case, I have a Sorinex, one of these glute rollers. I went with the Sorinex model just because my wife had asked for this. This is one of my wife's Christmas present. In reality, it's also a present for me. She had used this at some kind of boot camp that she had gone to. She asked for one, and I went Sorinex because this was the first one that I recall seeing. And I also wanted to support Made in America where I could versus save a couple of bucks and go with one of the cheaper versions that you could find anywhere. This works really well. I like it a lot, and I'm glad we got it. And now I'm gonna shove it back under here. So I think that is everything on this rack. Let me take a look. I do have some utility pins up here. I have and also one of these carabiner posts from Rogue that I got with the slinger. This is the only thing that survived from the Rogue slinger that I owned. And I think other than that, that's my rack. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. If so, let me know in the comment section below. If I didn't answer a question, let me know what else I can answer. Look forward to seeing you guys soon. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.